Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to this, the Cult Movie Podcast, Cult Potato. As always, I am your host, Campion, and joining me is my ever faithful co-host, Mr. Grady Hooker. How's it hanging?
I'm good.
I was gonna start it by doing like an a cappella cover of the Transformers theme song and seeing if you would join in with me, but then I realized you wouldn't because you're Killjoy. So what's the point, Grady? Why do I even bother with you?
It's not that I'm a killjoy. I probably just wouldn't even recognize it.
It's the Transformers. It's one of the most iconic theme songs in history. I'm fairly certain you would get it.
This is the first Transformers I've seen. I haven't seen the Michael Bay stuff. I didn't watch the animated show as a kid.
There has been a Transformers series on New Zealand television. I'm pretty sure every year since like the 80s. I don't think it's ever gone since the 90s. There was a gap between the original and Beast Wars, but I'm pretty sure they've just been broadcasting Transformers non-stop since we were very, very young.
I didn't like robots. Especially when they were in disguise.
Maybe I should have started out this episode with the whole thing of I'm your defender of the universe, Campion Bot, and joining me is my arch nemesis, GradyCon, or something like that. Maybe.
That would have been better than the stock standard. This is the second to last episode. Where's the hype?
My creativity has just bottomed out. Okay, I mean,
this is the episode you asked for. We extended the length of the show so that you could watch this movie and do a podcast episode.
I feel like the Autobot and Decepticon thing would have worked as well, because I'm pretty sure I really like this movie. I'm just going to come out of the gate and say it, because, you know, I watched this a lot as a kid. I'm a big fan of Transformers. And I actually, funnily enough, they actually did broadcast the original Generation 1 Transformers when I was a child. Grady! They broadcast it every day before school, so I grew up with this version of the Transformers as well. So, yeah. And I'm fairly certain, I know you, Grady, but I'm pretty confident when I say that I'm pretty sure you did not like this movie.
Look, maybe you shouldn't be confident in everything. I'm not going to come out of this gate and say that it's a horrible movie. I'm not going to say that I hated the movie. I'm not going to say it's a 10 out of 10 movie.
Well, dude, okay, not even I would say it's a 10 out of 10 movie.
I'm quite glad, compared to some of the other films, that it wasn't a 3-hour slog. But yeah, I had my issues with it, but I don't want to always start off with the negative stuff. You do some positive things.
Yeah, well, of course it's not a 3-hour slog, Grady. For starters, it's animated, so I mean, God, that stuff is expensive, Grady. You really think they have the budget to make this 3 hours? Name one 3-hour animated movie. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure it's out there,
BRB.
But most of them tend to be under an hour and a half because animation is very expensive. Especially since, okay, the animation in this movie is a tad uneven in places, but for the most part, it's pretty solid.
Oh, you're right, and I hate that you're right. Oh. In the Corner of the World Extended Edition, in this Corner of the World Extended Edition, at 2 hours and 47 minutes, is the longest animated film according to Wikipedia.
The longest is only 2 hours and 47 minutes?
Yeah, according to that.
Huh. Well, actually, I'm not surprised. As I said before, animation is very expensive.
If you count films released, that's the In This Corner of the World Extended Edition. Number 2, right behind it, is Final Yamato. And there's a couple of others.
I assume that's like Space Battleship Yamato.
Probably.
I assume that's what it is. What's the longest?
In This Corner of the World, that's what it's called.
Oh, okay. Well, you said the second longest, so I assume that's...
Oh, no, Yamato is second.
Yeah.
If you count films released in separate parts, then Digimon Adventure Try at 9 hours wins.
Okay, but that's like a bunch of different movies, right? That doesn't count.
Look, don't blame me. This is the Wikipedia. They do list them separately. But no, the number one is that In This Corner of the World. The only name I recognize up here is Evangelion, 2 hours and 35, and that was released last year.
If there's anything that's gonna run over that, like that's gonna be long, it's Ava.
Yeah.
Anyway, the film we're talking about today is, of course, Transformers the movie, or as it insists on being called, The Transformers the movie, which is a nightmare of a title. I don't know why they put the second "the" in there. They could have just called it The Transformers movie, or Transformers the movie, and it would have been fine. So, I don't know. This is, of course, the 1986 animated film based on the original Generation 1 Transformers television series. And yes, this film is definitely a cult classic. I know I'm jumping the gun with the statistics here, but this film bombed at the box office, but it has still maintained a very strong cult following, especially among like the Transformers fan base. And I feel that in the wake of the live action Michael Bay movies, the love for this movie has only gotten stronger. Because even though this film, it's not perfect, it's definitely has a fair amount of flaws. Like, it's a kid's movie from the 80s, alright? It's gonna, and it has all the, the things that come with that. But I think that when you compare this to the stuff that Hollywood has been pushing out for the past decade and a bit, I think that this stands head and shoulders above those. Although it's difficult for me to talk about that because you apparently haven't seen those either.
I think I saw trailers for them, or like maybe they were on when I was in the room, but I definitely was not paying attention to them.
To be fair, you're not missing out on much. The first one is pretty okay, especially if you're just like a fan of the series. But otherwise, they're pretty missable. The second one in particular is atrocious.
I know they put a cannibal in the main actor role.
I'm sorry?
Campion's not familiar with Shia LaBeouf, actual cannibal.
Shia LaBeouf, yes. Wow, Grady, wow, that a relatively obscure meme from like a decade ago. Congrats, Grady.
You're on a cult movie podcast, man. What do you want from me? I did actually, I don't know if it's because I was watching this movie or Googling things about it, but my Facebook decided to just throw Transformers things at me. And I saw some meme that was talking about how, like, the second movie had Transformers turn into humans.
Yes.
So
it did.
That's all I know about the second film.
And to be fair, those do exist in like actual Transformers lore. They're called pretenders. So,
alrighty.
So there you go.
You're not making it any better here. You're meant to be defending the Transformers lore.
No, I'm more than happy to crap all over the live action movies, and I know that quite a few people in the Transformers fandom do like Pretenders, mostly out of nostalgia, and because it's from the old school Transformers toys, which people tend to like quite a bit. Pretenders are lame. I've never liked Pretenders. I think they're very lame. If they want to do like a modern update to it, I think they could do a pretty good job of it, but the original Pretenders were not very good. I'm sorry. They were kind of lame.
Yeah, all I really knew, like, there was a few things in this movie that, like, I wouldn't say shocked me, but sort of threw me for a loop. I obviously knew the concept of Transformers. I knew your main characters and stuff like that, or who I thought main characters were.
Okay, Grady. For like the 6 people who clicked on a Transformers video and don't know the basic premise of Transformers or who the main characters, like the 2 main characters of the entire Transformers franchise are, why don't you just give us like a brief rundown of those?
Oh, God. So there's robots, and they can transform into, I would have previously have said vehicles, but it looks like literally anything they can transform into.
Like, in arm's reach, I have a Transformer, because I collect them, of course. I've got one that turns into a boombox, another one that turns into a grasshopper, and another one that turns into a pill bug. They can just whatever. Yeah, that's just in arm's reach of me, Grady. There are some weirder ones out there.
You have the good guys, the Autobots, who I believed were led by Optimus Prime.
Yep.
You have the bad guys, the Decepticons, who I believed were led by Megatron.
Yes.
Neither of those characters make it through.
No. I mean, Megatron technically does, but technically doesn't. Yes, so I think we should open up with what is probably the most infamous thing about this film. A lot of people die in this movie. Just a lot of people die. In fact, it has been dubbed like the Great Toy Massacre of 1986 is what this movie has been referred to, because they kill a lot of characters get killed off in this, and not unlike the Disney way where like a bridge falls on them or they fall off a cliff. Like, some of them are just murdered on screen. If they weren't robots, they would not be able to get away with it in this movie.
Yeah, it was rough. Like, every time I thought I knew a character, and I was like, oh my god, I recognize... Okay, you've killed that one.
Yes, and of course the most famous death in this movie is Optimus himself dies in like the opening scene of the film.
Mm-hmm.
And unlike because this happens in the second live action Transformers movie as well, but unlike that movie, he doesn't come back. Like, he's dead. He's stone dead by the end of the movie.
Yeah, it's real rough, and it's super early, as you said. Basically, we open, there's a war between the Autobots and the Decepticons, and over this planet, and we get introduced to this big third-party Unicron, but you're like, here's your hero, here's your villain, and we kill them both. Have fun trying to figure out what's happening. And for somebody who's not that tied to the rest of the Transformers, I started to get confused.
Yeah. Now you're starting to know how young, like, 8-year-old Campion felt when his dad showed him this movie for the first time. More like 11 or 12, because I was just, as a kid, I was like, oh, I want to watch the Transformers movie. And when it was in theaters, and my dad's like, okay, son, I'll show you the Transformers movie, I've got it right here. What? But it's still in theaters, how did you get it? And it was the animated one, and I was annoyed and disappointed at the time, but in retrospect, this is an infinitely better movie than those. So, yeah, I'm not actually too worried about it, but yeah, as you were saying, Optimus dies in the opening scene, and then they just proceed to slaughter most of the show's cast, just in the first half of the film.
Look, I barely knew who Ultra Magnus was, and then he's gone burger. Hot Rod, I figured out that he was going to turn into a Hot Rod, but that's all I had. And then he's like magically the hero of all this stuff. I knew Starscream. I knew him. He's
disintegrated.
Just yeeted out of the world.
Yeah. Although Starscream was so popular, he actually does come back as a ghost in the main series.
Look, it's a character I at least knew. And I was like, okay, maybe we're going to have some sort of like rogue Decepticons that are separate to the main... Nope. He's gone.
He's just gone, yeah. And as I said, he comes back as a ghost in the main series. Not just in that series, but even in the Beast Wars cartoon, which is set like thousands of years after the main series, his ghost is still rocking around, and he just goes around possessing people.
I'll take it.
Yeah. And a reoccurring thing that shows up a few times in other Transformers shows, set outside of like the original time, like the original Transformers universe. Starscream coming back as a ghost is a surprising reoccurring element that crops up from time to time.
Yeah, it's if it works, right?
Yeah.
But it was one of the other characters that I recognized that were not called Optimus Prime or Megatron, and unfortunately they gone, and I was back to not really knowing anybody.
Yes, and okay, just a brief rundown of some, but not all of the characters who die in this film. We have Brawn, Prowl, Ratchet, Ironhide, Optimus, Starscream, Windcharger, Wheeljack. The three Insecticons are reformatted into like the new Decepticons by Unicron that follow Galvatron. Megatron, Skywarp, Thundercracker. And yeah, those are just a small number. And I guess Unicron himself dies if you want to count that, but yes, a lot of other ones. And even outside of the film itself, in the script, it notes that Gears, Huffer, Sunstreaker, Sideswipe, Howl, Trailbreaker, and Mirage are also killed off. So just most of the film's cast, well, most of the show's cast dies. And in fact, the only reason characters like Jazz, Soundwave, and Bumblebee are able to survive is purely because they were popular enough. So they're just like, fine, they can stay on. They won't kill them. In fact, do you know why most of the show's original cast is killed off, Grady?
The licensing was running out.
You're close. Toy sales. Pure toy sales. They had a new line of Transformers toys coming in, so to thin out the cast, they just killed them off.
Alright.
So the new toys could come in.
It's like Toy Story X Game of Thrones.
Yes. And in fact, in a lot of Transformers series, this is why characters get killed off, is purely because their toy isn't selling well enough, so they're writing them out of the show so they can bring in somebody new. Beast Wars did the same thing.
Alrighty. Well,
Yes.
then you kind of need your character to sell heaps of toys, and then you'll be in for a job forever.
Again, that's why guys like Soundwave, the guy who turns into the Walkman with all the little tape decks inside, that's why he got to stick around, because that's actually a really cool gimmick, and people like that toy, so he was allowed to stay around.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I do want to know, Grady, because as a child, as a kid, I reacted to laughter at a lot of the unfamiliar elements from the 80s Transformers series. So I have to know, how did you... to just some of the weirder stuff that shows up in old school Transformers, like Perceptor, who can turn into like a microscope, or Soundwave and Blaster, who turn into like boom boxes and have tape deck Transformers, or the Dinobots. I just want to know how did you feel about that?
The Dinobots I knew vaguely about, so I was fine with. The rest of them, confused to shit. Every time a new concept came up, both me and my partner, who hadn't seen any Transformers stuff either, were just like flailing arms around going like, what the hell is this? I've noted down, as you said, cassette player, VHS tapes. I think I saw, I think it was Megatron turn into a gun. There was a lot of things that I was not expecting for things to be transforming into. And we had so many different classifications as well. Like, you had your constructor bots joining together, you have Dinobots, you got mini bots, you got all these other things. I was overwhelmed with the variety of bots we had. There was just so many different things, and that they were transforming into, that they were categorized as. They were Power Rangersing together. It was nutty stuff.
Yeah, there's just a lot of things in there, and I didn't want to interrupt you because, you're on a roll, but it's Constructor Cons, Grady, not the Constructor Bots. All of the Decepticons, the Decepticon teams end with Con, alright? Bots are the Autobot teams, alright?
Hold on, I'm checking my... Ooh, I actually can't see any to give.
Also, just as a little minor thing, we only get one combiner team in this, right? The Constructicons. There's like a bajillion other combiners, so I genuinely want to know where they were in this film. Because Devastator, they're all like, oh, we're the strongest bot. And so it's like, there's a few other combiners, just, where are they? Some of which are on the Autobot side, just wondering where they were. They could have helped out. Optimus may not have had to die.
Look, sometimes characters are off having a vacation. And everybody needs a break from time to time, and otherwise they're just going to burn out.
True. And they avoided the massive, the massacre of this film. Although I think the combiners tend to be pretty popular. Combining has always been a very popular gimmick, so they probably would have been okay. Hence why the Constructicons are still around at the end of this movie, because their toy was still doing pretty well. Which, when you look at it, is a very callous way to look at your characters purely through merchandise sales. Which brings me to another point. Why would you then kill off Optimus, literally the most popular character in the franchise?
So that we can push Hot Rod. We need more Hot Rod sales.
I think, Grady, you may have... It's from the sounds of it, it sounds like you may have picked up on the fact that Hot Rod just isn't as cool of a character as Optimus.
Well, Hot Rod just annoyed me throughout the film.
he annoyed most of the people who saw this movie. In fact, that's why, because they did intend the death of Optimus to be permanent. They had no intention of reversing it. But towards the end of season 3, after the massive backlash from the fans of the show, who might remind you are children, there was a massive write-in campaign from, kids across the world who wanted Optimus back, especially since Hot Rod is, if we're being blunt, kind of lame compared to Optimus Prime, so they had to bring him back at the end of the 3rd season of the show. But yeah, he's not that great, especially since we had another candidate, he wanted Ultra Magnus to kind of take over, who, not only does he have a much better design, but
he
feel
looks
Ultra
almost
Magnus,
identical to Optimus Prime.
There's a reason for that, Grady. Did you know that underneath all of that extra armor and all that padding Ultra Magnus has, he's literally just a white Optimus Prime toy? They never show him doing this in the show, but his toy is just a white Optimus with a bunch of armor stuck on him.
I believe it.
Yes. I know that because I actually do have a toy of Ultra Magnus sitting in my closet. See, that's kind of why. It didn't quite work out, but I did want to come over to your house to record this, just so I could bring all of these Transformers toys that I have, a good chunk of which are actually in this film. Because recently, they've started making toys to make them movie-accurate versions of the characters from the movies. They're doing one for all of the Dinobots, which I'm in the midst of collecting. I've got 3 of them: the T-Rex, Grimlock, the Triceratops, the Brachiosaurus. So yes, I did want to kind of bring them on. As I started talking about more characters, I just dumped another toy on the table, but unfortunately we couldn't do that.
No, unfortunately it doesn't work out. But hilariously there, you mentioned my favorite character of the entire film, the only one with any amount of charisma whatsoever, and that's Greg Berger as Grimlock. Best character of the film. Yes,
Grimlock is fantastic. He's actually my favorite Transformer. That's actually the reason why I collect them, is purely because I really like the movie version of Grimlock that they did. It's absolutely gorgeous, and I love him as a character because his whole shtick is he's a big caveman, but he's a giant robot who turns into a T-Rex that breathes fire. How is that not the greatest thing ever?
You gotta love it.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, that's the reason why he survived until the end of this film, because the Dinobots are very popular because, unsurprisingly, giant robots who turn into giant robot dinosaurs that breathe fire is just a cool gimmick. And even the original 80s toys, you could put little flint in their mouth, and they'd have a little thing that you'd roll in the back of their head that would shoot sparks whenever they're... Yeah.
That feels a little dangerous.
Yes, 80 toys are ludicrously dangerous. Actually, was it them or was it the Monster Bots? It's one of them. It's one of them.
Basically, you know way too much about Transformers.
Yes. It's almost as if I've been a fan of this franchise since I was a small child, Grady.
This is how you got to shoehorn the movie into the filming. You're like, we gotta do Transformers.
Yes.
I need to make you watch this. I need you to enjoy the death of Optimus Prime.
Yes. As people listening may have noticed, we're not talking a lot about this film about the actual plot, because it's a very straightforward kind of plot. The film starts out with the Decepticons attacking Autobot City on Earth. Megatron and Optimus both die. Megatron gets reformatted into Galvatron. They kind of chase each other around for a bit. Then Hot Rod comes back and saves the day as Unicron is trying to destroy Cybertron.
That's really it.
Yeah, that's kind of the film. And in fact, one of the major criticisms of the film around the time when this came out was that it was a rip-off of A New Hope.
Okay.
Which you can kind of see.
Yeah, I it's not like that's a 1,000% unique plot style. So, yeah, I see it, but I don't think it should be a criticism of the movie. There's a lot of other things to criticize this movie about. You don't need to criticize that.
Yes. It is pretty straightforward in a way it's plotted. And there are some genuinely awkward moments, like the whole universal greeting scene, which...
That's the best scene.
Do you remember what the universal greeting is, Grady?
No, but when I was rewatching this film, I had an old coworker, Ben, who would say this phrase all the time and just confuse the hell out of me. And so I heard it and I was like, I got you. I took the photo of the screen playing the movie and I sent it to him. Yeah. And he immediately knew what was happening.
Exactly.
I enjoyed that scene, but I agree that it definitely was a weird placement. I probably only enjoyed it because of Ben using it at me.
And don't get me wrong, I loved it as a kid. I thought it was great. Just kind of, a bit funny and a bit goofy, but it's just a teeny bit cringy when you're an adult.
He didn't even offer me any Energon cubes at all when he said it either. I was so disappointed.
That's a very important part of that greeting, Grady, so I don't know why he didn't.
Look, I'm gonna criticize the movie now. We're like half an hour in.
Yeah, go for it.
It's just my main piece with it is that there was two types of scenes. It was action scenes and non-action scenes. I would say that action scenes comprised maybe 90% of the runtime. Stop you
here, I would say that's the vast majority of scenes across all.
I'm getting here.
I know you're going to narrow it down, but I just want to say that that's a very broad way to describe, how most scenes tend to work in most movies.
You are
stuff
correct.
Stuff happens or stuff doesn't happen.
Criticizing them for different reasons. So 90% of the film that is action scenes is flashing lights that's hurting my eyes. And the 10%.
I'm just like, wow, I didn't notice this when I was a kid, but rewatching it, it's like, wow, I'm really glad I don't have epilepsy.
Oh, 100%. I wrote seizure warning down on my notes, yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm really glad you don't have epilepsy either. I genuinely forgot it was that bad.
And then the 10% of the film that is not action scenes, I would categorize as garbage.
Just nothing happens. Actually, no. Bits and pieces do happen, like the part where, I would say Starscream's coronation, and the scene where Unicron is reformatting Megatron into Galvatron. But apart from that, it's just nothing. Just absolutely nothing.
Which means you can cut this movie down to 10% of nothing burger, 90% of flashing lights. And that is the Transformers movie for an hour and a half.
And
sorry, the Transformers the movie.
I'm gonna let you in on something. That's also most Transformers television shows, and most Transformers television shows in a nutshell. Just flashing lights and action scenes, and they're just nothing. That is most of the franchise.
Look,
there are exceptions.
It's a good format.
Beast Wars and anime and Transformers animated are very good, but for the most part, it is just nothing.
It's a good format that appeals to its target audience of children who don't have epilepsy, but
which thankfully is most children.
Thankfully, as an adult watching it, not having any attachment to Transformers, it was the same action scene plastered over and over and over, and just boring in between scenes. As you said, the coronation and the reformatting are probably the only two scenes I could tell you happened off the top of my head. Otherwise, it would be fight scene A, fight scene B, and fight scene C.
Yes, but Grady, you're gonna love those action scenes because it's just 80s hair metal just over top of all of it for some reason.
It's the only other note I wrote, which was, I can tell you now this movie is from the 80s just from the opening soundtrack.
Yes.
It proved to be 80s so many times.
Yes. Hey, and I will defend this movie's soundtrack. I think this movie has a kick-ass soundtrack.
Oh, it's a good soundtrack, I'll give you that.
80s hair metal is awesome, and I adore it.
There was some points I thought maybe it didn't quite fit. But
it's just okay. Yeah, I'll give you that. They didn't have to use it for every scene in this movie.
As a soundtrack, like listening start to finish, I would enjoy it. Its usage in the film, hit and miss, but we'll say like 80% hit, 20% miss.
Yeah. Hey, but it has what I consider one of the most iconic songs in all of film. It has The Touch, Grady. You can't tell me that when that song started blasting, it wasn't the best thing on earth.
I believe it had the touch twice, if I recall.
It did.
played.
Once at the beginning when Optimus came in to save the day, and then the bit at the end when Unicron was defeated.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So if
it
you
was a
ever,
good song.
the reason why anyone knows The Touch or why that movie has seeped or why that song has seeped into pop culture, it is purely this film. No other reason.
Do I need to film or
Did
need
you know
to
that
Google?
song before this movie? Did you know that song before seeing this movie?
Only as a pop culture reference, not as
This is what
around.
it's referencing. This
Gotcha.
film specifically. That song. It wasn't created for the film, but this is sort of what got it on the map and what sort of debuted it.
Well,
and the only reason Stan Bush has any semblance of a career is purely because of his association with the Transformers series.
Yeah, the Wikipedia page, the whole section at the top where it usually has a big piece about the song, just says The Touch is a rock song by American singer and guitarist Stan Bush. The song features prominently in the 1986 animated film The Transformers the Movie and appears on the soundtrack released that year. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all it says about the film.
That's because that's all you need to know about that song. It's the song that Optimus Prime kicks ass to, and you don't need to know anything else. I think Dare is the other song from this movie, but The Touch is the big song from this film. And in fact, it goes on to be used in multiple other Transformers properties. In my absolute favorite, Transformers: The Fall of Cybertron, which for the record is an amazing game. I know I'm not just saying that as a Transformers fan, it's legit a good game, which baffles me because most licensed games, especially the ones based on Transformers, tend to suck. But the two Cybertron games, for whatever reason, are absolutely brilliant. They play that song during the final boss fight of the game where you take on Megatron or take on Optimus, depending on which side you pick. But yeah, it's just a really cool song, and whenever it started playing in this movie, I'm just like, yeah, that's great. I want more of this. Thank you.
I see it was also used in the live-action Bumblebee film.
Yes, it
A
was.
homage.
The only genuinely good live-action Transformers movie is the Bumblebee film. You remember the Iron Giant, Grady? Remember watching the Iron Giant? Imagine that, but with Transformers. That's the Bumblebee movie.
There you go. And it's got John Cena, so...
It does have John Cena, and he's actually pretty good in it.
There we go.
Yeah,
he's got a very
movie.
specific type of films that he can make.
Yes.
Alright, I'm done at looking at Stan Bush's Wikipedia page.
There isn't a lot there. Most of it's Transformers related, if I'm being honest. And I remember, I remember reading something, I don't remember where, but about how, when he originally licensed his song for the film, he was worried that it was going to, tank his career. But then later on in his life, he's like, actually, I'm really glad that I did, because that saved my career. Yeah. So, I'm happy. Yeah. Every now and again, for, Transformers conventions, they bring him in, and he does, a live performance of it, and it's usually pretty great.
I'm sure you'll want to attend one of those one day.
Of course it is. Grady, it's... Okay, even if we ignored the fact that it's Transformers related, it's an 80s power ballad.
Yeah.
How is that not amazing?
It's a good song, I'll give that to you. But, one good song a movie does not make.
Yes. Although I would also say this movie we've talked about it a bit, and it is a bit uneven at times. Great animation overall, though. It's a really pretty looking movie.
I couldn't tell, my eyes were too busy being burnt out.
Okay, when it isn't trying to give you a full-on epilepsy attack, it's usually pretty solid.
I now fully understand the joke. I think it was a Simpsons episode where, Transformers were giving people seizures. I understand it now after watching this. I get it.
Yeah. I forget what exactly... Was it Super Epilepsy Robots? It was something in that line.
I'll figure that out.
I think that was mostly a reference to, an episode from the old Pokemon anime, which did give quite a few children some epilepsy attacks.
Battling seizure robots.
Yeah, hence why it was banned outside of Japan, but I tangentially, it's something that definitely, you can connect back to this film for obvious reasons. Well, to the Transformers series in general for obvious reasons.
Why do we just use flashing lights so much?
It was the 80s, Grady. It was the 80s.
Yeah, I guess.
Most of that period is like cocaine and flashing lights.
Yeah.
Actually, cocaine, flashing lights, and Madonna. You put those three together and you have the 80s.
Fair enough. Look, this is a pretty short episode overall. I'm sure you could rant about Transformers for 6 hours if I just left the recording and let you go.
Although, I feel that we do have a couple more things to go through.
Yeah, so I was going to say, what else do you want to hit? What else do you think we got? Because I'm out of notes.
This is a big one. The voice cast, Grady, because this film surprisingly has a pretty beefy voice cast.
All right, buckle in. You're about to be here for another 12 hours.
Okay. For starters, Unicron himself. This was the final role that Orson Welles, one of the most famous and influential filmmakers of all time. This was his final role. Was playing the big planet in the dumb toy robot movie.
Not the worst way to go.
He literally died 5 days after finishing his lines for this film.
A little sad, given the rest of his storied history in film.
He made Citizen Kane, Grady, and this was his final movie.
Look, some people would say the Transformers the movie was his magnum opus.
I would like to know who these people are, because even Transformers fans would not say that. Don't get me wrong, he did a fantastic job, considering he was literally dying as he was recording his lines. But, magnum opus is probably pushing it just a bit too far.
But he's also not the only, crazy, well-known person. I'm sure you were jumping for joy with the Leonard Nimoy casting.
Yes, he doesn't play Megatron. He plays his upgraded version, Galvatron, who he actually does a pretty good Megatron voice. I actually didn't notice it as a kid. It's something I only picked up on as an adult. But yes, the famous Leonard Nimoy of Star Trek fame played Galvatron, which he actually does a pretty good job. Like, he didn't do a lot of villain roles in his life, but yeah, like the whole playing villains is something that he does very well. I remember reading something about how at the time, like a few people who worked on this movie, at the time he was a bit embarrassed to work on, the Transformers movie. But later on in his life, he looked back on it fondly because playing, a raging megalomaniac cartoon villain is actually kind of fun to do. And he even came back to voice the main villain of the third live-action Transformers movie, Sentinel Prime. So, yeah, that's already pretty good. They even had like a cheeky little Mr. Spock reference in there when in the third movie when he says the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, which blew my mind as a teenager. I'm like, holy shit, there's a Star Trek reference in my Transformers movie. What is going on here? And of course, we have some good old some of the old standbys from the Transformers TV show. Of course, we have Corey Burton, who voices a ton of different people across the franchise. Peter Cullen, who is like the voice of Optimus Prime. Like, when you think of Optimus Prime's voice, it's him. Like, he even voices him in the live action series and even a few of the new animated series. He's like the quintessential go-to Optimus voice.
Okay.
Also the voice of the Predator. He voices the Predator from the Predator movies. Like that iconic, little like clicking sound he makes. That's him. So,
okay. There
you go. Rick Gar, the leader of the Junkions that they meet on the Junk Planet, is voiced by Monty Python alumni Eric Idle, who I was very surprised. I believe Jazz, I don't see it here, but I'm pretty sure Jazz is voiced by Scatman Crothers, who's like a very prominent voice actor who's done like a bunch of different things across his career. Frank Welker, who voices most of the cast. Everyone from the original Megatron to Soundwave to a bunch of Soundwave's little cassettes like Rumble, Frenzy, Ravage. just a ton of different things. You'll know Frank Welker from everything. If you've seen
From everything.
something in the past 30 years, chances are he's in it. He is one of the most prolific voice actors in human history. He was the voice of Scooby-Doo for like a long time. Pretty much, yeah, just pick something and chances are he's in it, especially if it's like an animated animal. For whatever reason, whenever they did like an animal in an animated project, he tended to voice them. So, there you go.
Don't fix it.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, Hot Rod is voiced by Judd Nelson, who's been in a bunch of different things, including
Absolute
films
nobody.
we've previously covered, like The Breakfast Club.
Yeah, I don't know who that guy is.
And of course this film has a massive cast because there's like a bajillion characters in it.
Yeah, but most of them die.
Yes, most of them do die. Actually, one of the new ones, Blur, was voiced by John Machida Jr., who was the world's fastest talking man for a number of years. He did like the old Micro Machines commercial. The only reason, he's the Transformer who talks really fast all the time.
Yep, and he moves fast, which seemingly is a superpower that a Transformer has, but whatever, I'm not going to question it.
You'd be very surprised at Transformers who have inexplicable superpowers for no reason. Again, one of them is a tape deck Grady who can deploy more Transformers, a power that you think more people would have because that seems really useful. Skywarp can just teleport for no adequately explained reason, and he's just a background character. Megatron can shrink into a handheld pistol, something that blew my mind as a kid. I'm like, no, you can't shrink. That defeats the whole point.
He transformed.
Yes. I really wish Megatron would still turn into like a handheld gun. He doesn't do that anymore for obvious reasons. Kids' cartoons in the 80s were wild, Grady.
They were definitely crazy.
Because he didn't just turn into a generic gun, he turned into like an actual license, because this is back when they licensed vehicles and stuff. He turned into like an actual licensed firearm. He turned into a Walther PPK, which you might know as the famous pistol used by James Bond.
Nope. That requires me to have seen a James Bond film.
You gotta know that. It's his iconic, pistol, the Walther PPK.
Yes.
It's like one of the few guns I actually know off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, hang on, let me make sure that I'm getting it right. Yes, I did get it right. It is the correct one.
Be funnier if you didn't.
Yes. Hey, I know I may not know James Bond, but I know my Transformers, Grady.
That is fair. I should have trusted you on Transformers knowledge.
Yeah. Okay. And with that, Grady, I believe we've finally
No, you missed a voice cast member.
Who did I miss?
You got to talk about Grimlock's voice actor. Please.
Greg Berger?
The guy who played Hunter, Ripto, Crush, a bunch of Spyro characters in the Spyro games.
Really? I genuinely didn't know that.
Yeah. He also played Red Monkey in Ape Escape 3. He came back to do the Reignited trilogy, I believe, as Ripto, Crush, and Gulp, all of the villains from Spyro 2. Does a lot of video game work, as well as a bunch of other stuff. He still does Grimlock to the day. But for me, he's one of the big Spyro voice actors, so I'm very aware of Greg's name.
Yeah, you're right. He is also an incredibly prolific voice actor.
Oh yeah, his filmography has its own page.
Yeah, he's done a lot of work. I only ever knew him as the voice of Grimlock, but no, you're correct. This guy's done a lot of things for our childhood, so yes, you're right.
I love me some Greg Berger.
Yeah, he is absolutely fantastic. Okay, so just moving in, because I feel like we have finally just gone through everything of this film, Grady.
There's not a lot to go through. We're already like over halfway of the film's runtime in podcast at this point. True. Although to be fair, I feel like I could honestly keep going. Like there is genuinely a lot of things to go through. Like I didn't even mention about how Weird Al Yankovic did some of the stuff on the soundtrack, or I don't know why I said but no, it was just Weird Al Yankovic did some of the work on the soundtrack. Could not tell you what. It was just
he just
something.
worked on it. But as we've mentioned before, this is definitely a cult classic. It was made of a budget between 5 to 6 million, and it earned at the box office between 2.6 and 5.8 million. So it definitely was a not financially successful. This combined with the disastrous My Little Pony movie lost Hasbro quite a bit of money, and it kind of knocked them out of making films for a very long time. Of course, they're back to making movies now, but with this, like, they're still making Transformers movies. G.I. Joe, they brought back films of... All of those movies are of varying quality. I believe they also made the Battleship movie, or was that Milton Bradley? You know, it doesn't matter, but all those movies suck. And this film did not do well critically at the time for obvious reasons. It's a film based on a children's toy franchise. It's made to push toys. It killed off most of its cast for the sake of selling more toys. This is not something that's going to play well to critics.
Capitalism.
And even children at the... Sorry?
Capitalism.
It's great. Make all of your make all of your creative decisions based on profit and finance. It's a great idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, even kids at the time weren't big fans of the movies because, again, they killed off all their favorite characters. There are stories of, I've no idea if they're true or not, but there are stories of children crying in the theater when they murdered Optimus Prime on screen.
I'd fully believe it.
Yeah, no, they did kill him in a very sad way, but in recent years, especially with the live-action Michael Bay movies, this movie has gained a significant cult following, the least of which is because this is just... Okay, for all the faults this film has, it's significantly better than the live-action movies, because, you know, you say this film is about, like, naked capitalism, but at least it's not the live-action Transformers movies. Yeah, there's just, like, a startling number of deaths in this film. They swear, Grady. Did you notice? Did you pick up on that?
I didn't know.
They swear, Grady. They say shit, Grady, a number of times.
Oh, no.
Or at least once. They said at least once. Which blew me away. I didn't notice it as a kid. I definitely noticed it when I was watching it for this episode. But, this film has gone on to, of course, The Touch has sort of entered into the pop culture psyche and has been referenced in a number of different forms. This film still gets referenced to this day in various pieces of Transformers media. As I mentioned before, there's a current ongoing toy line where they're recreating a lot of the Generation 1 Transformers toys based on their movie counterparts, trying to make them as, you know, movie accurate as possible. And yeah, I mean, it's honestly just a pretty solid animated movie. Well, children's animated movie. You know, it's not Pixar, but it's still pretty solid, and I appreciate it when they can manage to make it. I'm just glad that it's better than the live action ones, is I suppose how I wanted to end this out.
Well, I've actually got some good news for you.
Okay.
I've been scrolling the IMDb trivia, and do you know the company IDW?
I do, Grady. I do know IDW. Are you talking about their fantastic Transformers series of comics?
No. I'm talking about the fact that, according to this trivia, they published their own adaptation of this film in 2016 that includes extra scenes such as a battle between the missing combiners and Omega Supreme, which is exactly what you were asking. Where are they?
Yes.
IDW answers that question.
Wow, Grady, congrats. You managed to know an obscure piece of Transformers trivia that I didn't know. Congrats.
Let's go, IMDb.
Actually, that is a good point. Where the f*** was Omega Supreme? He's like the strongest guy. Where was he?
He was busy fighting the other combiners at the Ark.
Okay. Actually, that's another good point. Where was the Ark? The Ark is like their main ship. It's not Autobot City.
They were fighting on it.
Yes. Also, another important thing, Autobot City isn't actually a city, it's actually a giant transformer called Metroplex. Why didn't he transform and help them out? That's all I'm saying.
plot.
Just, yeah, stuff had to happen, Grady. And another thing, did you know this film took place in the far-off futuristic year of 2005?
Wow.
Yeah.
There's some crazy stuff happening then.
It was set 20 years after the original show in the 80s, so, yeah. Yes, and of course, lastly, the whole Megatron turning into Galvatron thing has become, a long-running staple of the Transformers franchise. Or at least, Megatron turning into, upgraded forms. Unicron has gone on to be, this, long-running villain in Transformers, going from just a giant planet in this one, like a Galactus-type figure, to the literal Transformers devil. Where he's, the opposite of the creator god of the Transformers. And before we close out, Grady, just little tidbit of Transformers lore. In the Transformers series, Transformers were created by a literal god, right?
Okay.
The actual god of the universe. Most of the life, other extraterrestrial life in this universe, they're machine. You see it in the film, how they go to a machine planet.
Mm-hmm.
That's the default standard, Grady, which means that, God is centered purely around machines, and humans just kind of exist as an afterthought. Which, you don't see that a lot in fiction. Usually, it's centered around humans, or at the very least, biological life. But humans just kind of exist, and robots are, the default life in the universe. Just one of the weird little quirks of,
You're not wrong. I saw, 2 humans in that whole film.
There were 2 humans, that is correct. You got me there, but all other alien life, including the junk planet they go to, and that planet that's destroyed in the opening prologue, all machine. That's the default, and this goes across a lot of other Transformers media. It's just machine. For whatever reason, machines are the default, and humans. There is no god for humans in this universe, Grady. We are but a mere afterthought when it comes to the machine gods of the Transformers universe, which is weirdly depressing and existential. The Transformers were created with a purpose, Grady. Humans are just kind of there. We are not in God's plan in the Hasbro universe.
No. That is something to leave the view or the listeners on at the end of the episode. You were going to leave them on live action, bad, animated, good, and instead you leave them on existential crisis.
Yes. Humanity is worthless. Just buy more toys. That's the message Hasbro's trying to tell us.
Look, it makes some money.
Makes them money, true. Okay, before we close this out, Grady, and you tell us what the final film in our podcast is going to be. Anything you want to leave us on?
It's a nice short watch. I'm not going to suggest people don't watch it. It was fine. Do watch out if you do have problems with flashing lights, because it is everywhere throughout that film.
Yeah.
And just go in with dead brain. Don't think too much. Just watch. Just consume. Don't think.
Yeah, you want to see a steam engine turn into a space shuttle? Yeah, give this one a watch.
Why not?
Okay, Grady. That is the Transformers the movie down. What is the final film that you have lined up for us?
That is the conclusion of the final season. We have 1 episode remaining. It is the finale. It is the big final one. All things going well, Campion will be coming around to watch it live with me, and we will be recording immediately after with our opinions. But I want to keep it a little bit of a surprise to him, so I'm going to mute myself on Discord as I tell the recording what the next episode is.
You bastard.
The next movie is The Room, Tommy Wiseau's classic horrible movie that people for some reason love. It has been talked about. It is arguably the reason Campion started this podcast, so he could make me watch this film. So he better enjoy when we sit down and watch that this weekend. Alrighty, Campion, wrap us up.
You devious bastard. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this little excursion, and thank you, Grady, for indulging me, and I do mean indulge, allowing me to indulge on something from my childhood. And thank you for joining us on the penultimate episode of the Cult Movie Podcast, Cult Potato. And we hope to see you all for the final and last time next week. Hope to see you all. This has been the Lexicon of Lore. And, yes.
You butchered that outro, didn't you?
I did, bitch. I was trying to... I did have this set up because there were a number of Transformers quotes that I was going to finish on, and I blanked. I'm sorry.
Well, the recording's still going. What are you ending it on?
Well, I was going to go... Well, I don't remember what it was, but the only thing that popped into my head was "Till all are one," because that's a famous line from this movie, but it doesn't make any sense in this context.
To all are one.
Buy more toys.